Hi, you guys. How are you glowing? Crystal here, and excuse my hair. I am working from home today. And now that I am officially a homeschool mom, so yeah, this video is about how I now was pretty much forced into homeschooling my son. I have other videos on my channel where I talk about, excuse me, I always have food on my mouth. Is that like mom life? Because I promise you, I always got something on my face. Anyway, so I have previous homeschool videos from about 2 years ago where I made an attempt to homeschool, what I was going to do. And I think I even have videos in between that time talking about going back to homeschooling. The thing is, this is how life gets you, right? So I always knew when my son was preparing to go to kindergarten, I always knew that I wanted to homeschool him. And I was very adamant about it. I just felt that, like, and that's not normal. At least I didn't know about homeschooling, and it wasn't normal conversation. It was like, it's just as I got really close to that time of preparing for him to go to kindergarten, homeschooling him was really in my mind. And my circumstances at the time was crazy, which is no excuse because we're supposed to push through things. And I was when he started kindergarten, I was like 7 or 8 months pregnant, living in the house with my parents. My marriage was a mess. Like, my life was just a mess. And I still made an attempt to homeschool him anyway, do virtual homeschooling, the K-12 virtual homeschooling. And I did it for a couple of weeks. I probably didn't even make it through the first week. I don't think so. But I had everything under control. I had everything that he needed. It was just being so prepared to pretty much have a baby and no support, no help, being in the house with my parents. And my parents are like, won't you do this? Won't you do that? And mentally, I wasn't like stable enough that I was just like, okay, I'm just going to put him in kindergarten. So now here I am. He's in second grade, and I had to literally pull him out of school for his behavior. It was like all of a sudden his behavior changed. And this had happened last year when he was in first grade around this time. He started giving a little behavior problems, but at that time too, our family was experiencing something that was different. So we figured, that because his dad wasn't around that much at that time, he was living in another state, working in another state, that was the reason why he was, acting different, because, his father wasn't around. And it passed. He did it for like a couple days and then it passed. And then this year, here we are at the same time again. And he started showing the behavior problems, but this time it wasn't a day or two. It was ongoing and it actually increased. So, let's see. Honestly, probably since January, he had got his first note in his agenda for getting in trouble in art. Now, my kid is not a bad kid. Like, he's not bad. He just had some, authoritative issues where it was like he didn't want to listen to what the teacher wanted him to do. He would pick and choose what he wanted to work on and stuff like that. So, I got a note in January, one note. And then in February, the notes started to come and they started to increase. And then the teacher started to call me. She's texting me. And I'm like, okay, this is getting worse. But the thing about it is they didn't warn me. Like, I believe that it had been happening from earlier on, but they didn't decide to really reach out to me and let me know what was going on until it had gotten worse, where they felt like, okay, now it's getting out of their control. So in a sense, it was almost too late because they didn't let me or his father know early. So eventually it kept getting worse every single day and stuff like that. So my son started to do some things that was very out of the ordinary. And me being a spiritual person, my husband and I, a spiritual person, we go to church, we trust in God. We look at things a little different. So we knew that because it wasn't the same major, and then all of a sudden, he does these things at spur of the moment. we had to really start buckling down on what we were going to do, because his grades are excellent. It's just at times he acts different. So then it got to the point where my son was, it was just some things that were getting out of control, and we were like, okay, we have to step in and do something. So we ended up going to the guidance counselor and talking to the, you know, the administrative people at school, and, you know, they're always on board. Yeah, we can do this, we can do that. My main request was that please let me know when he starts doing this from the very moment you realize it. And for a week, they did not do that. They didn't honor my request. So it got to the point where I just had to go up there and withdraw him. And it was one of the hardest decisions for me, because I feel like where I am right now, not being selfish or anything, in school is almost over. Like, they have about 2 more months in school. Where I am right now is like, okay, you know, not saying that I can't homeschool, but decisions that I was making was like, it didn't include homeschooling. And then now, you know, we were pretty much forced into it because it was the best decision. Like, we had to do it. And at this point, we're like riding on faith, you know, like, I'm like, I got to figure this thing out for real now. We have to do this. This is the only option, because I could have taken him out of that school and put him in another school, but his behavior probably wouldn't have changed. So I'm like, okay, we're going to get somebody in. And I also made the executive decision to get therapy for my son. A counselor, you know, someone that believes in the same things that we do and can handle things in you know, all different aspects, not just asking the kids questions, but really diving in and helping them with the inner work and their mindset. So I made a decision to get him therapy as well, because the thing with me is that because I know my son and I watch him, I always pray and ask God to reveal who my children are, who they were created to be, what's their purpose. I pay very close attention to who they are. Like, I'm not that parent that wants them to become who I want them to become, or, you know, I'm not that parent that like, oh, you're going to be this or you're going to be that. That's not me. My prayers are always that God, they'll be who you created them to be specifically. So just show me and give me the wisdom as a parent to send them in that direction. So I knew that I had to step in right now, because with my son at 8 years old, he's very intelligent. I mean, his memory is excellent. He's a numbers. He is a numbers guy. Like, I'm realizing who he is, and I don't have time to allow these things to come into his life and in his mind. Like, not saying that he can't know how to deal with situations, but it's also up to us to show how we're going to handle things too. So I stepped in, I got therapy for him, because I didn't want to act like I can handle this all on my own. And I also want my children to know that it's okay for you to express your feelings. It's okay for you to sit down with someone to help you think things through, because I wasn't raised like that. My husband wasn't raised like that. We were raised in a household where we had to keep our things to ourselves, our emotions to ourselves. We had to I received a phone call, you guys, but I was saying, like, as far as me and my husband growing up, we had to internalize everything. So there was a lot of things that we dealt with that growing up as children that we knew would not be right for us to handle it the same way with our children. Thus the reason for me wanting to homeschool from the beginning, because I'm like this really untraditional woman. Like, I don't believe in conforming. I don't believe really in the education that is out today. What bothers me is the fact that education is still the same way as it was when I was in kindergarten. I'm 32 years old, and my son is learning exactly the same way that I was in school. And here we are with all of this technology and all of these different things that are going on in the world. A huge difference from when I was in kindergarten. Would have never thought that this technology that we have, but it just shows how the world is evolving, and school and education should be evolving the same way. So that was my main reason for wanting to homeschool. I didn't want my children to have this routine, very traditional life. So now I don't know if this is God, but, you know, I'm just like, okay, now I have to do it. And it's a lesson, because if I had just stuck with what I was wanting to do from the beginning, what I really, really believed in, but I allowed people to talk to me and persuade me and I allowed them to convince me to do otherwise, I wouldn't even be dealing with this because it would be normal for us right now. I would have 3 children in homeschool and this would be easy and there would be no problems, and I would be preparing for, I would probably already have my 5-year-old who will be starting kindergarten next year. She would probably be going through kindergarten right now instead of VPK. So it's a lesson learned, but sometimes things do come back around, and if it's meant to happen, it just comes back around in a way where, you don't expect it. And the well-being of my family comes first. My home is my ministry first. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that my family is okay. Like, even though God has already let me know your children are okay, your husband is okay, your marriage is okay. Like, I trust in him. But I also have to do my part, because trusting in him requires me to have faith, but it requires a lot of strength. It's not for the faint at heart. You cannot be weak when you're trusting in God. No matter what your life look like, your circumstances look like, you have to continue to trust in him. And I know that this is him, because there's no way that I could keep my son in a education system that doesn't even honor what I'm asking them to do as a parent. They're still doing things the way that they want to do it. And I can't have that, because at the end of the day, I can't blame the education system for the way that my son turns out. It would be on me and my husband as far as how my son turns out. Now, once he gets older and becomes an adult, he takes a different way. It was him because that was his choice. But as of right now, we are in control, and we are the ones who condition them and train them up and, teach them things. So that is how I ended up in homeschool. So now I'm back at square one. And I know in the beginning I was using the K through 12 program. Well, of course, that's not available right now for me because we're so late in the year. School is actually about to be over in about 2.5 months. So now I'm just, taking it easy. At first, last week, I was putting so much pressure on myself. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? He has excellent grades. How am I going to pick up where he left off? Do I need to implement the same things that he was doing in school? And when I started to do that, I realized that I don't need to do that, because it's about freedom. So now I have the freedom to teach him how I want to teach him. For even right now, for the things that they were learning in school, I just felt like it was so irrelevant. And then too, my son is really advanced. So he was getting prepared to be tested for gifted. But now I can advance everything for him. I can advance that for him. I believe that in school, he was becoming frustrated. He was becoming burnt out. He was becoming just, frustrated over doing the same things every day. And kids need change. They do. They need structure and routine, but they also need change. And you have to be able to spark the interest of children and be able to understand where they are right now, instead of teaching all of the children the same thing at one time. All of these children are not the same, but what the education system does is condition all of the children to be the same. So you're pretty much teaching the children at very young ages, at the very crucial ages, that I'm just like you and you're just like me. And that's why we're learning the same thing. That's why we do the same thing every day. And that's not true. That is so bad. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, you should never teach children that. And I know now, I've realized that my children, they are not the same. And I would never make them be like the other. I have my son is very intellectual, and he's very, he's a numbers guy. He's analytical. He asks a lot of questions. He's very neat, likes to have things perfect and in order. And then I have a 5-year-old daughter who's just a free spirit. She's very visual. She loves nature, and she loves flowers, and she loves being silly, and she's just so different from him, and she loves to laugh and, just be free. And then I have a 2-year-old that is in the middle of both of them. So all 3 of them are different, and we have to pay attention to that. And now these days, parents are so caught up in work and providing that we forget that our children need us. They're watching what we do. They need us mentally and emotionally. So, I've been pulled back in a sense. It's like, okay, Now you got to get yourself back in the right place, because now you have to take care of your son. And taking him out of school was the hardest thing that I had to do. I cried. And not because of me, like, oh my God, what is my life now? I cried because my son, like, there was just some things, like, he loved school. And he loved his friends, and he loved PE, and he loved those things. But I just knew that we had to do this for him, for his well-being. And even now, I'm like, he might not fully understand, even though we tell him why, but I'll be able to tell him as an adult, this is why we did this. So, yes, homeschooling it is. Very interesting journey, because now I really have the chance to, really see if I want to put him back in school in 3rd grade and put my daughter in kindergarten and when the new school year begins, or I'm just going to be on a mission to find the proper school, a Montessori school, or I'm just going to be homeschool co-oping it for a long time. But this is what it is right now for us, and this is how life is. This is how motherhood is. I mean, we just have to make sure that we keep our priorities in order. So even right now, I'm thinking, like, even if I was working a full-time job, I would have quit that job for the well-being of my family. Like, I don't want, because I need to provide and go to work, to be the reason why my family is destroyed, why my children are delayed from the path of their purpose, So y'all keep me in your prayers. If you can recommend any homeschool options, because there's so much out there that I find myself getting overwhelmed. I'm on Pinterest and YouTube and stuff like that. And I'm just like, okay, Crystal, just do what works for you right now. So I printed off some worksheets, because even for math, I'm like, okay, he was learning fractions in school right now. So instead, I went and printed some money worksheets for his math. And then for just different things, it's like, okay, now I have the opportunity to teach him what I want to teach him now. And have everything together for the new school year. And homeschool doesn't stop, so we'll be doing things through the summer. But I'm just thankful for the freedom. I'm thankful that he's home, right now. It's an adjustment. But he gets to be with us, gets to spend more time with his father and his sisters, and we're just a family now, and this is a time where we just have to push through it. So if you're a mom that was kind of forced into homeschooling, not necessarily by choice, but there was just circumstances where you knew that homeschooling was the best option, I want to encourage you to remain in prayer, but also surround yourself with other people that are doing it, because I know for me in my community, it's hard for me to find people of my color that are doing the same thing. But I don't care if I got to get, I'm going to get involved in all of the homeschool communities around where I live, so I can know these things and have the support. And even right now, the support of my husband is like really great, because it's a big difference from when I attempted it in kindergarten. Like, we just weren't doing that great, but now we're on a totally different level, and I'm just grateful because it's God's timing. The way that it happened is different, because now I'm it's not necessarily by choice. It was because it was the best decision, versus when I was trying to do it before, it was by choice, and I just felt like I'm Superwoman and I can do it all. And yes, I can homeschool and have a newborn baby, but at that time, it was timing. So I'm just grateful for the journey. I just remind myself that, God is amazing, and he's merciful, and he's loving, and he will never put more on us than that we can bear. And I'm trusting him. He's our provider, and we remain in prayer. And I always practice gratitude now. And I'm thankful for this time now that my family gets to spend together, because we didn't have this before. I'm grateful for the time that my husband is home, because he was always at work. And come home and tired and can barely do anything. I'm just grateful for this time that we have. And I know God is going to work everything out for us. So remain encouraged. Be strong. My son and I read, because I have him read Bible verses now. So we read Joshua chapter 1 verse 9, and God is commanding us to be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, because he got us. He's always with us. And that was the verse that my son and I read today, and we talked about it. And these are the times where scriptures like that become a reality, a real reality. Like, you have to be strong and courageous and trust that you can do this. And Joshua was leading the people out of the children of Israel to the promised land. And you have to be strong and courageous. You have to keep going. You can't allow yourself to get afraid and be discouraged about it, or it won't work for you, or it's going to be difficult for you. So perspective and attitude, it's everything. It's everything. So remember to glow, remember to affirm yourself, remember to do what makes you happy, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. I will come back later and talk about therapy and, how I made that decision to get him therapy, and what I know it can do for him, and then kind of keep an update of his journey with therapy. Also, I'm gonna start sharing my journey with therapy and my in therapy for my marriage, and how it's really elevated us and helped us. Oh my gosh. So if you have somebody that tells you therapy is not good, or you think it's not good, you might want to think twice. You want to find the right person, but therapy is life-saving. There's a reason for it. There's a purpose for therapy. So consider it. And, I'll talk to you guys.